I remember literally sitting at my mother's house and writing a ton of jokes in case someone yelled something at me.
Live from the Willie Nelson and Friends Museum Showcase in Nashville, Tennessee, it's Music is Funny. Musicians talking to comedians about music and comedy. With your hosts, Raelyn Nelson and Jonathan Bright.
Smoking on so hard, I keep toking, I'm drunk, but I'm still drinking too. Hey y'all, welcome back to Music is Funny. I'm Raelyn Nelson.
And I'm Jonathan Bright from the Raelyn Nelson Band, back with another ridiculous and unnecessary intro.
Elisa Lampanelli. Hi.
There she is.
Hey, am I visible and you can hear me?
Yes, both.
Yes.
Hey, how are you guys?
Good, how are you doing?
How are you?
Good, nice to meet you.
I'm Raelyn, and this is my co-host and guitar player, JB.
Nice very cool. Nice to meet you guys.
Thanks for doing this.
Yeah, it's really cool of you to do this. Thank you.
Yay, no problem. So you're in Nashville?
Yep, we're at my grandpa's museum, the Willie Nelson and Friends Showcase and Museum. And
A lot of rhinestone and gold records.
That is so badass. Oh my God, I love that.
Yeah, usually there's some people walking around, but they can't hear anything you're saying. They can only hear what we say to you.
Oh, okay, no problem. Once in a while, I think I'll have a little dog making an appearance because he's very needy right now. So I'm sorry about that. Here you go. Come on, Parker. Oh,
He's
God.
Good at expressing his feelings.
He literally ignores me all day until I'm talking to somebody else. So that's Parker.
Hi, Parker. Oh, so cute.
He's a good boy. Good boy.
Okay, so we usually start off by asking you, what's the first music you remember loving as a kid?
The very first.
I literally was absolutely raised by parents who love show tunes.
Oh, wow.
So my earliest memories were definitely musicals that age badly in the current state of things. So there's like South Pacific or Oklahoma or anything that literally now you can't do anymore because there's so many horrible stereotypes in them.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, at the time, it was really fun and wonderful to listen to them. And I, of course, ended up wanting to be a musical theater kid, never had the talent, but I still kind of go, oh, those were like the happiest memories as kids. And of course, Christmas music, but all the old stuff like Bing Crosby, and you can't like him anymore because he hit his kids. Damn it.
Yeah.
So what can you do? Everything my parents raised me on, you can't listen to anymore.
Did you ever see Seven Brides for Seven Brothers?
I didn't, which is really weird because that's right, that era, you know?
Yeah. I remember watching that one with my great grandmother over and over again, and it does not age well either. They steal the women.
Yeah, there's literally nothing that from that era that's pretty much well received right now. Because I was actually sitting around with a bunch of my friends who are in musical theater, and we were trying to name like all those 50s and 60s musicals, and they're like, nope. And they were naming the stereotypes. I'm like, damn it. I guess we'll have to watch Book of Mormon instead.
Right. That's like Holiday Inn. There's a whole musical number in blackface that now that they rerun it on, cable, that whole scene is taken out. But if you go back and watch it, you're kind of like, Jesus Christ, man.
Yeah, you can't even believe that stuff. I mean, it's really funny because I was accused last week on a podcast of being overly woke. And I'm like, well, I'd rather it be that way than the other way. So, people change. But I will say what really made me laugh was last year when they said they were going to take out one of the episodes of the Golden Girls because they had mud packs on their face. And I was like, I don't know, maybe the Golden Girls of all people, they just have carte blanche to do whatever they want.
Yeah.
Why do you think it's a bit ironic that you have been accused of being too woke? That's something.
It really made me happy because, for so many years, 30 years doing insult comedy and, picking on every race, sexual orientation, every stereotype in the world. And now to have since retiring, kind of worked on myself enough to educate myself and figure out that there's more to life than just me. I'm like, oh, that's kind of a cool thing to be accused of. So I'll take it.
Yeah. Yeah. How does a woman get into insult comedy? There's very few of you guys that ever did it. And
I think actually when you talk about insult comedy is so specific, which I love because it's like a subset of comedy. And really, it was Don Rickles, as you guys know, was the king. And there's very few women who were like roasty comics. So I started doing it, and I think it was just out of seriously an event that happened like early on. I was on fifth time on stage, and I talk about this in a play that I do. Fifth time on stage, and someone yelled an insult after I got off the stage from the audience, and it really hurt. And I was like, oh, I got to get them before they get me, because I was so thin-skinned that it hurt so much. And what was ironic was at the time, it was before I had weight loss surgery, so I was overweight, and the guy actually yelled, which is a compliment, he yelled, "Bring back the fat chick." So, I mean, if I had self-esteem at all, I would have heard the bring back part.
Right.
Well, when you don't like how you look, all you hear is the insult. And I was like, oh no, now I have to get them first. So I remember literally sitting at my mother's house and writing a ton of jokes in case someone yelled something at me. And it just seemed too good to waste the jokes, and it just kept going.
So did you, when you were thinking about comedy, did you look up to like Don Rickles or anything, or did you have comedians, or did you just kind of back your way into that and start doing it? Like, were there people you looked up to?
That's a great question, because I literally, as a kid, we never watched stand-up. Like, I guess my parents saw it on the Ed Sullivan or Johnny Carson, but what I remember was watching the Dean Martin roasts on NBC. And those were so great because they made it look like all the people were friends. So I have this impression when I start doing comedy that, oh, it's just a bunch of people who joke with each other that are all sitting around friends. Now, after doing like 8,000 roasts, I know that everybody didn't even know each other, and some were friends, some weren't. And I'm like, oh, but it seemed like I have a very communal vibe. And I guess it's pretty natural that that formed how I was as a comic. But as far as stand-up, I don't really remember even seeing it at home.
So what made you do stand-up for the first time?
Well, I think what happened was I always, now that I've like worked on myself and analyzed it, I wasn't ever ignored as a kid, but I was a middle child. And part of me thinks lots of people who end up performers, especially comics, are. And it's almost like we have to find a way to be heard and to get noticed. And I always, had a turn of phrase. I always knew I was funny, but I was never class clown funny, because that's always the guy who's just a douchebag. I was always like stealthy. So it was more where I would kind of like sneak a joke in here or there and try not to get in trouble. So when I hit 30, I'd been working at Rolling Stone magazine and Spy magazine and a bunch of different rock and roll publications, because I was a journalist major. And I just one day said to this guy in the research department at Rolling Stone, I'll never forget it. I said, I don't know, Steve. I said, I think I want to try stand up, but I don't know, like, what do you do? Like, how do you stand up there and just talk? And he's like, oh, you don't want to be a comic. It's self-centered. All the attention's on you. It's horrible. It just means you need a lot of attention. And I go, sounds perfect. So I was like, I guess this is what I have to try. And luckily it kept getting better and better.
Now, did you, I want to get back to music a little bit. Did you ever sing? You said you love show tunes and that. Did you ever, in musical theater, did you ever sing?
I think I sing. People say I can sing, but I'm almost just doing an impression of people. So I remember in high school, they were doing You're a Good Man, Charlie Brown, and they were doing, Annie, Get Your Gun. And then they said they're going to do Maria, or West Side Story. And I auditioned to be Maria because, of course, in my high school, it's Catholic, it's all white. We need somebody who's white to play Maria. And I literally just listened to the record and imitated it. So I don't know how to sing well. I don't know the proper way to do even vocal warm-ups. And every time I've taken singing lessons, I quit after 3 because I'm like, ugh, I don't need this hard work. I could just imitate the record.
Yeah.
So I can sing, but it's not trained at all. But I do have a good ear, and I just love being loud and, as good as I can be without any training.
Well, you probably kill at karaoke at that.
Dude, I nail that shit. My favorite thing to do is a few months ago, we went to one of those dueling piano joints.
Oh, yeah.
Give them money to request a song. And then if you don't like what somebody else requested, you could give more money and get them to shut up. So I said to the guy, look, man, I'm going to give you the biggest tip. If me and my friend could go up and sing Shallow and I play the Brad Cooper part and I'll piss my pants on stage. Like, not literally, but throw some water down there. He's like, oh, this I got to see. And I was like, we nailed that. So
Wow.
I do like that stupid stuff. And it's just like a fun little hobby.
What music do you listen to? Well, okay, so when you're in high school, what music did you listen to in the car or at home?
Yeah, good question, because I have the nerdiest answer other than my first answer. I was so into, because I graduated in 79, I'm 60. So we were obsessed, me and my nerdy friends, with Emerson, Lake and Palmer.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
Prog-Rock.
Oh, yeah. Prog-Rock all the way, dude. Jethro Tull, Asia later. ELP was the best, though. Like ELP, that was the god. And Genesis, the early stuff. So what happened was me and my brother were obsessed with that music. I found nerdy friends who were too. And I think that's why I got into music journalism, because I just wanted to interview the bands that I worshipped.
Yeah.
And I just ended up interviewing every bad progressive rock and every good progressive rock band and a lot of crummy heavy metal bands. And it was just so much fun until it wasn't. Like, it's so much fun until you go, well, I'm never going to be the greatest writer. I'm never going to be a staff writer at Rolling Stone. What else I got? And that's when I decided to try comedy. But dude, freaking ELP and all those guys, that shit is so badass. Even now, if like Funeral for a Friend by Elton John, which is very progressive, as you know, and anything by Rush comes on, like I just did a TikTok video, me doing Limelight with a bass guitar. It's so bad. But I'm like, I can't play bass and I can't sing, but at least I can mouth it. That music was great. And I remember interviewing Geddy Lee 3 times for different music magazines. Oh, man. I prepared and he loved me. He goes, you're always on the case. And I'm like, yeah, I know about you guys. So it literally is such happy memories of kind of being in that part of the business without getting sucked in too much.
That's amazing. So you're like one of the 6 female Rush fans that exist.
Yes. I mean, thank you. I haven't been called a female in a long time.
So were most of those, like when you're interviewing those heroes, were they all semi-cool? Did you run into any, you don't have to drop names.
No, I would tell you.
Yeah.
I would tell you, I was so prepared and so good at doing research. And back years ago, I mean, you didn't have computers. You had this service called Nexus Lexus that you look them up. You sent, I don't know how, a fax or something, and they sent you articles on them or history. And I'm like, I actually literally, my first celebrity interview, it wasn't music, but it was Fred Gwynne from the Munsters.
Oh, wow.
And he was a Harvard grad, Shakespearean actor. And I was like, I need to really be prepared. So I found a ton of articles about him in the library on microfilm.
Microfiche.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I went and I researched, and he goes, how did you find out all this stuff about Harvard and everything? I said, I just went to the library. So it was pretty funny. I never interviewed anyone who was a total dick. Maybe because they were on their best behavior, maybe because it was, kind of set up by the record company. It wasn't anything in depth like Almost Famous, but which, by the way, favorite movie of all time, Almost Famous. If I could only watch one movie the rest of my life, that's it.
It's a good one.
It's so great. Oh my God, I cry every time. Multiple places in that movie. And the kindest people were really like the progressive rock guys. Maybe because I was so enthused and I was this big nerd who they were just like, wow, she actually gives a crap about this stuff. So it was great.
Yes. And getting back to comedy, I would think the way your act works, like you started like early 90s, right? Roughly when you were.
Yeah.
So was the fact of the type of humor you did that make you slide in with all, because it's a male dominated field, obviously, especially back then. And there were some ball busters back in the 90s.
Yeah.
So with your act and your fearlessness, I guess, of saying anything, were you one of the guys?
Yeah. I mean, at the time I was, I was 30 something years old. So I started late for a comic. So I was already an adult. I already knew what I could get away with, and I kept getting away with more and more every show. I also was, always had a boyfriend, and I was always big girl at the time. And so I was very much considered one of the guys and a guy comic. And I honestly liked it because it was never like, oh, Lisa's a chick comic. It's like she can just go in there and destroy. And I really did comedy like a guy, which to me at the time meant like a punchline every 6 seconds. Like you just freaking go. You don't give them time to think. And yes, a lot of that's driven out of huge insecurity because you don't want to ever be up there and not have a laugh going.
Right.
But the great part was it was definitely like always on the list with the guys. It was never like chick comedy night, hire her. I was like, good. Like I want to be like one of the dudes, and it seemed to work for as long as it did.
Yeah, and the way you write your joke, you don't go off on real long stories. You write jokes. So I wonder if your journalism background, you're probably a pretty prolific writer as a comedian when you were doing comedy, and I would imagine your journalism background sort of helped with that.
Well, I think what it helped with the most was that it was about the early 90s. I had no, I was small income, had your basic, day job to support comedy at night. And I was like, I can't afford a publicist, but I want to get notoriety. I want to get known. So it was me I knew how to write press releases for myself. I knew how to manipulate the media just a little so that when the New York Times came once to this all-woman comedy night, and I was there, they were like, wow, you do kind of different sort of humor. And I'm like, yeah, they call me comedy's lovable queen of mean. So of course I manipulate the Times into putting that in. And then I say later, the New York Times called me this.
Yeah.
So it's all bullshit. But what's great is you just kind of know how to work the media a little bit. And also I just know how to write articles. I had a column for a while in Playboy that was hilarious. And just, I just knew how to do the job. And that they actually asked me to write Rickles' Rickles' eulogy or obituary for the Times. And what an honor, of course. Wow. And I was like, oh, I can do this. And it's definitely because of being a journalist and a writer before.
Did you go to school to be a journalist?
Yeah, I went to Syracuse University they're pretty famous for journalism.
Yeah.
And I never wanted to be a reporter. Again, I think I just loved being an editor. I'm very anal. I enjoyed the F out of copy editing and correcting. I mean, even now.
Grammar, Nazis.
Oh my God, I'm the best. And my brother too, I think, because we felt we needed some control. Yeah. And, I've just analyzed the F out of why we were this way. And even now on my podcast, I swear to God, I don't let my co-hosts tweet out anything or put out any content unless I proofread it, because I'm like, you represent Lisa Lampanelli now. You must learn how to spell. So, is it good? Is it bad? At least we look professional. So I do still use those skills.
And it's funny how one grammar mistake can make you look so dumb.
Oh my God.
Not you specifically.
Understood you.
It would make anybody look dumb.
Yeah. Seriously, you're right. And I am so anal about that. And also, I used to work in the research department at Rolling Stone and at Spy, and they always said, look up everything. And I'm like, well, I know how to spell Bruce Springsteen. And they're like, yeah, but God forbid it sneaks by with a typo. If they don't trust you to spell someone's name right, they don't trust you about the rest of the facts. So it makes so much sense because, they're so flippant that they can't even get that right. So I just learned the value early on of just get it right. I hate mistakes. And when I do them, I get so mad I can't delete that post fast enough.
And luckily your name's hard to spell, so you can tell if people are paying attention very quickly.
Oh, dude, well, I've literally gotten offers for little like movie parts or little reality show stuff, and they spell my name wrong. And my manager always goes, oh my God, we can't take this. They don't even know how to spell your name. And I'm like, I know, it like feels weird. And my real name is spelled differently because no one was going to say my last name as it's spelled, which was Lampanelli. So that's the Italian way, Lampanelli. Oh my God. Once I was playing the Midwest and I heard it on the outgoing machine at the comedy club, and they said, Lisa Lampanelli. And I said, well, fuck this. And I changed the spelling. Me and my buddy came up with the spelling that no one would get wrong. And yeah, they get it wrong sometimes, but at least they can pronounce it.
Yeah, just to spell it phonetically so that you can.
Yes.
It's like reading it in the dictionary and it's with the asterisk and everything. Yeah.
Yeah, you almost have to like dumb your name down enough so the real folks can like understand it.
Yeah, yeah. Everybody puts an extra N on my name, Raelyn. You know, it should
sure.
have two N's there. And so I get mad at my mom. I'm like, why didn't you just put two N's? So I don't even care now. I sometimes I'll put the N and just put a slash through the last one. Just end up
Yeah.
spelling it.
That's right. You have to embrace it. You know,
Yeah.
we do at some point, you know.
Yeah. So
I'm curious, did you catch a lot of shit from people from your comedy? I mean, I know there were probably some haters out there, but I mean, you were harsh, and there's a large audience for that stuff, me being one of them. But nowadays, I'm sure you would catch more. But back in those days, did you ever have any like major pushback from any of your routines or roasting or anything like that? Or was it more just like people in the wings?
Well, back then there was no social media. So again, no one had an instant opinion. And I'd get the occasional, and I mean like occasional email or fan letter that was like, that was too mean or whatever. And I'd be like, you know what? All the people who came to the show, standing ovation, they come back. That the way you can really tell if they like your comedy is if they come back again. And then they sit in the front again and they email you and go, I get emails from every ethnic group and sexual persuasion going, we're in these seats, look for us. We'll raise our hands, make fun of us, and call us this, this, and this. So I'm like, that's who you really have to go towards. But I got very little pushback. The only 2 times I got protested were by the Westboro Baptist Church.
Oh, that's a badge of honor right there.
Yeah. And it's like, wow, now I'm in good company because they hate everyone. They hate gay people. They hate Black people. They hate them all. So now I'm being protested for the right reason. So it felt like, oh, this is cool. But then, you know, once I started not enjoying comedy as much and didn't love the lifestyle anymore, I was like, oh, I got out right at the right time. And it was really accidental because I always say now I canceled myself before I could get canceled because there was no such thing as cancel culture.
yeah.
I retired, then that stuff starts popping up. And I was like, well, I stopped doing it because I didn't like it anymore. But whoa. I wonder if I could have kept doing it. Probably not. I would have probably had to change everything. So I guess it was all meant to be.
Yeah. And you started this podcast, right? And
Yeah.
I listened to it and I love it. So it's going to be on an automatic rotation for me. So how did you get hooked up with those guys?
Oh, yeah. Oh, my God. This is so funny. Okay. It's called Losers with a Dream. And the reason, by the way, deep dive, the Losers with a Dream was a phrase I used to use on the roasts all the time. So what would happen was, on a roast on Comedy Central or wherever, you have a whole dais full of people and the main subject of the roast. So I would go up and make fun of the whole dais. And then I'd go, but enough about these losers with a dream. Let's talk about, boom, William Shatner, David Hasselhoff, whoever. So I had met these 2 guys. They're in their 30s. They're straight, not my target group of friends. Like I'm 60 and I like gay men a lot. So I'm hanging out with these 2 guys because my niece says, you know, could you come see them and give them some comedy advice? And I was prepared to tell them they suck and to quit because like, I'm like, don't mince words. I'm going to tell you. And they were actually funny. But the bigger thing about them was we get into this really deep, soulful conversation about marriage, vulnerability, intimacy, like shit that I'm going, how are 2 straight guys that age who are they're very masculine. I can't believe they're talking this deep in front of me. And I was very flattered. So I said, guys, this is a podcast. And they go, really? And I'm like, yeah. And then I said, jokingly, I go, I'll do it once a month and yell at you. And it ended up, I did it once. And I just loved their vibe so much because it's so deep but funny that I'm like, let's just do this. And so we started doing it every week and we did 30 something episodes. And I rarely say I love every minute of it. I love it because it's deep. As you can already tell, I don't like small talk. I like big talk. And I cannot believe there's such a, I mean, I'm sure you guys have noticed in the podcast space, there's very few men who are masculine talking about things that are truly deep in their hearts. They're very bro-y, these other podcasts. I go, none of that belongs here. So I'm so flattered that you like it. They're going to freak out. They're going to be so happy you like it.
I do like it. Getting into very serious topics and opening up about their feelings.
But it's still funny too. And that might first, what made you retire from comedy? Not you've been doing it for 30 years, I guess, at that point.
Yeah.
It was time. If you wanted to, you certainly deserved it. But was there like a thing that happened, or was it just a gradual, I'm just not really into this shit anymore?
Well, you know what I come to realize, I just started noticing my life. And whenever anybody talks to me for advice about changing careers or changing or retiring or doing any big decision, I'm like, just start to notice every day. So I slowed down enough when my dad was sick, like 2 years before I retired. I had, wouldn't even have thought about retiring, but I slowed down because, me and my brother and sister wanted to be around him more. So I start noticing that I don't miss it. I start noticing that I hate the idea of getting on a plane or going to a different hotel. I wanted to be around family and friends. And I'm like, oh, I finally became a noticer of my life that this isn't for me anymore. So I'm smart. I'm not like hair trigger, let's quit. I call my business manager. I'm like, hey man, if I save, how long is it before I can get out? He's, well, you got to get rid of a few places that you live. Like, you don't need 4 places to live. And I go, no, I just want one. I want to live in my childhood home. He's like, oh, he goes, you only need to work 2 more years. So we put this whole plan in place because people can't just quit their jobs. I mean, I feel so bad for these people who call these advice shows and they get told, just quit, man, follow your dream. It's like, no, you have to make a plan or you're going to really backpedal big time. So it was really cool. I was allowed to sort of have an end date. And when I wanted to announce it and have it taken seriously, and I was so lucky because Howard Stern was like, yeah, you can announce it here and you have to do your final roast. And we did the last roast I ever did. And it was amazing because I felt he honored it. He really gave it a nice, he took it very seriously and honorably.
That's very cool. And were you sad at all, or was it just relief after that last roast when you're walking out of Stern's studio where you're just like graduating from high school and like, yes, I'm over with it?
Yes, dude. Because can I tell you, I've always been the type, and people don't think this exists, but I'm sure you guys do. When you're done, you're done. Because I never quit anything till I'm ready. I never, like, for instance, I'm divorced and I'm still friends with my ex-husband and his new wife, who I fucking love. I even went to their wedding. But people are like, aren't you a little sad about the divorce? I'm going, no, because when you know it's right, you're not sad, or at least I'm not.
Yeah. So
you process the grief during the process. So then when you're out, you're like, oh my God, the breath comes out of you. You exhale. Yeah. I just sold last summer this huge house I had. It was ridiculous. And I had no business having this house because I don't need a lot of space. It's me and 15 pounds of dog. What am I doing? And I sold it. And people now even say, oh, don't you miss that beautiful house? I go, ew, I want to throw up thinking about it. So I think you guys know, when you know it, there's really no grief after it's done, in a good way.
Yeah.
And it's probably cool. I don't know were you planning on doing podcasts and stuff when you retired? Yeah, because it seems to be the perfect landing spot for a comedian. You still get to be funny. You still do all that shit, but you don't have to tour.
Well, and the whole thing is too, with the podcast, I didn't even want to do one. I did one about a year after I retired. I got offered a deal from Podcast One. It was really visible, and it didn't get enough downloads for them. And by the way, it got 10,000 a week. So to them, and I get it.
That's huge.
They need big numbers, and I get it. I fully respect it. And it's like having a TV show that is good, but only gets 1 million viewers. Like, there's different standards. So they said, we can keep doing it, but you're going to have to pay for the editing. I said, my gut tells me that it's too big for me right now. I'm retired. So I had no intention of doing it again. But then I met those guys and I'm like, oh, all this coaching I do and all this advice type stuff that I'm into now and self-help. Oh, I can use all my knowledge of all the therapy I've had for the last 30 years and really bring these guys along. And so we create this thing. And now I'm like, okay, like I said, I've loved every minute of 2 things in my life: the podcast and planning my wedding. Because trust me, planning a wedding is the most badass thing. And it's so much fun when you are older and you get to do what you want. So I'm like, wow, you can't predict what you're going to do later. It just kind of filled my soul to do it. And I did it. And I bet that's like a musician. I'm a piano player from, 6 years old, doing the lessons for 12 years. I was never very good, but I never could play by ear. I never can make anything up. And I'm like, oh, that must be how it feels when the music just comes into you, if I'm correct, Is that how it feels for you?
Yeah, it's not something that you can just sit down and make happen. It's sort of, if you're trying to write a song, you'll get an idea and sit down and hammer it out.
Sometimes I go like 6 months and nothing's coming to me, and I'm like, I guess I just don't write songs anymore. I'm not a songwriter. And then I'll be driving around back roads and listening to a comedy podcast and something will pop in my head. And I'm like, oh my God, that's great. I have to write that down. It's just.
What it is, do you find, because I would think it's the kind of thing where you go, I can't force anything.
Right. Yeah.
I think what I had to do was, upon retirement, fail with a small F in little ways. Like I had to play off Broadway. That wasn't a financial success, but it fed the soul. The podcast, the old one, didn't have enough downloads for those guys. So I did these little things, and they all had kind of small F financial failures, but got me to the next thing. But then when my mom passed away this past year, I had the big revelation that you got to be empty and see what comes in versus just kind of scrambling. So when you said you just have your guard down, you're listening to this comedy podcast, and all of a sudden you have an idea for a song.
Yeah.
People are always scared to let the emptiness in because they think nothing will come in. And do you find it always does?
Well, yeah. Meditation is a big part of that. I think, if you can sit still and just think about your breathing, those important ideas are what you need to know from, I don't know, whatever you want to call it, great spirit, God, spiritual guides, angels, I don't care, Pleiadians, wherever you want to go with it. They will send you messages in that time, but you have to quieten it down, you have to be still.
Right. And as I said to the guys on my podcast, I said, guys, we picked the exact wrong profession for this. Stand-up is the worst profession for reflection because all you're doing is trying to fill the hole. I wasn't loved as a kid, or I was loved, but not enough. My girlfriend broke up with me, fill the hole, more laughs. And we just did an episode called Gimme, Gimme, Gimme More, about trying, because one of the guys on the podcast is former drug and alcohol. He still called himself an addict because he's sober 4 years. I got a guy who was addicted to bodybuilding and steroids. I obviously have always had food issues and issues with relationships. I'm like, man, no matter what we tried to put in there, it didn't fill the hole. And especially stand-up comedy, because you're full up there of all the laughs. You get off stage, go to the hotel room, you're by yourself, and you order room service or the booze or whatever your thing is. Mm-hmm. And I go, oh my God, guys, all we have to do is be quiet sometimes. So when you say meditation, that's a huge challenge for stand-ups because we are bottomless fucking pits, and it's just not the way to live.
Yeah, it's hard to turn your brain off.
Yeah, and we've talked about it before. It's with all of the new technology and stuff. Yes. You get creative when you're bored, and nobody allows themselves to get bored anymore. That with there's literally nothing going on or nothing to take my attention. I'm as guilty of as anybody, but sure. All the good ideas come when you're zoned out, when you're taking a shower or driving down a road or whatever. And if you don't ever allow yourself to get bored, it's tough to get anything coming in.
I thought you were going to say taking a shit.
That too.
He's right. He's right. Well, that's what's so funny is I literally always take my phone into the bathroom because I always said I have my best punchline ideas in the shower. And now I'm finding I just got a hot tub installed, and for meditative reasons, because I never found a pool relaxing. I found the piece of the heat really calms me down and lets me get there. And I'm like, oh, I've got to bring pencil and paper near that hot tub, because those are the only times, and also in the bathroom, where I'm like, I got to write some stuff down. So every time I'm out to dinner, I say, I'm taking my phone. I'm not going to go and call anybody, but just in case I have a brainstorm, I got to write this down. So yeah, we have to get where we feel defenseless and have it come in.
Do you listen to comedy podcasts?
No, I've never been a comedy fan. I've never No, never. I can't, like, it seems, you know what it is? Always during my career, it seemed like homework. So it's like, ew, like, and also PS, every comic is so fucking self-centered that we think we're the best in the world. So I'd be like watching comedy and I'd be like, oh, guy's fucking terrible. And of course they're not. You just have to be the best because you're mental. So I go, well, I never really was a fan of watching stand-up. But I do love comedy movies. Like I'm obsessed with Judd Apatow stuff. I love Step Brothers. I love the other guys. Like I like anything super funny. And I love sitcoms so much. I can watch Frasier, Will and Grace, and Mom 24/7. Like it doesn't matter. Just have it on the background. It's an instant mood lifter because all the shows are quality, like All in the Family, those kind of things.
Yeah.
But also, boy, they get you where you're just lifted. So yeah, I'd never watch stand-up at all.
So you're a legit life coach. How did that happen? Like what was
that's a great
trained, I guess. Yeah.
Well, yeah, let's put it this way. I'm an illegit one because I basically, when I retired, I was like, I really want to help people and all this crap. And I start taking this intense 3-year program. Okay. And I literally am coaching all these people as practice. I'm actually friends with one of them still because he's great, good kid. I hated it so much. And I'll tell you why. I wanted everyone to change at the pace I thought they should change. And you know that coaching or therapy is about letting people have their own journey. And I suck at that. I want to tell you, you're a freaking idiot. You got to break up with the girl. You got to move. You got to do this. Well, I quit the program after like a year. I said, this ain't for me. These poor people who have to deal with me. And I said, let me just keep acquiring knowledge, keep going to workshops, keep being open. And I actually gave a few food and body image workshops at different meditation places. I was like, oh, okay. So I'm not a coach with the guys. I'm more of an advice giver. And literally with my friends, I'm a recovering advice giver because I realize unless they ask, they don't want to know.
Right.
You know, like I said to a girl the other day who was confusing a friend of mine. She's like, you kind of called me on something. And in my head, I go, uh-oh, I was an advice giver that day. That was wrong. Switch to cheerleader. So it's not everyone wants to know what you think all the time. And my ego has to be put back in check. But with the podcast, I mean, those two losers, they listen to me about everything and it's for entertainment value. So fuck it.
And you are helping people through that podcast. I haven't listened. I've only listened to a couple so far, but y'all are helping people, you know, so you're doing it.
I do think, because what I love to come through is that they really have their guard down and they're telling the truth. And I just am fascinated because at age 30, there was no way I was telling the truth. I was no way talking about trauma. There's no way I was talking about home life or my parents, you know, and boundaries. And I mean, the issues we cover, like the shit, like, and by the way, I make them take the big issue of the week because every week it's something huge like acceptance, vulnerability, fear of success, which is such a weird concept, but it has to be talked about. You know, addiction, all this stuff. And I just am like, no, we have to go real deep with it. And they don't disappoint me. I'm actually really impressed because at 30, I couldn't have done it.
Yeah, it's also probably the times too, because I'm 54, 53. I forget. But when I was 30, you weren't, you didn't do that.
No.
That was a sign of weakness, if anything else. You just
right.
keep
And also,
that shit and bury it down deep somewhere and let it flow out of you when you're 40 and have a nervous breakdown.
When it's actually very brave. When it's actually
I feel they are. Yeah, I feel they're so brave because they can bring it all and leave it on that stage. And I'm like, whoa, that's pretty cool. And it's funny because, I mean, I've talked about food addiction and different things I go through for about maybe 10 years. So it's only been about since I'm 50. I'm like, wow. I think the world is much better now when it comes to mental illness. Like you see so much mental health stuff out there. So I think that's why millennials and Gen Z and Gen X are just so much better off because they can actually talk about healing themselves without shame. And that shame that comes in, that's what shut us down at my age group.
Yeah,
for sure.
What made you want to help people? When did that compassion hit? What?
I think I probably always
I mean,
had
we all thought you hated everybody.
I know. I thought you.
No, I did too. Well, that's what's wild is I always said about insult comedy, the reason there's so few of them is because you have to love everybody equally. And if you don't love people, you can't make fun of anyone. There's a famous line from Jerry Maguire, also one of my favorite movies, where he's something like, you have to love everybody or love nobody. And it's just like, oh my God, like the reason I make fun of everybody is because I don't view anybody as less than. The only one I thought of less than was myself, as we all do. We all have that huge fear of not being enough. So I think once I sort of helped my brother and sister with my dad when he was, in hospice and this and that, I was like, when he passed, I missed that helping thing. And I couldn't really transfer it to my mom because she was really fine for a long time. For like 6 years, she was badass. Like she didn't care. She had like a lot of mobility. She was a 91 when she passed. So she had a great full life. And I'm like, oh, what do I do to have any impact? And it just kind of came up that, let me look into this coaching. And this evolved from there. And I think I have to, like I said, rein it in sometimes, because as I'm listening to my friends, I'm like in my head going, well, they need to know this and they need to work on that. And I'm like, no, they're not asking. No, shut up. And I think that helps them too, in just being, softening into just listening to them.
So are you just acting in front of them? Like, what do you do when your friend's saying something and you're like, oh my God, I know exactly what the fuck you need to fucking do. And so how do you, okay, so even if you're shutting up and not doing it, and your face is saying, what do you do? What do you do?
I hate it, but I go, this is my lesson for today. I view it as a lesson. So here's what I do. This is so funny. I literally sit there hoping they'll say, what would you do? Because then it's like, oh, you don't want to know what this happened. This is so funny. My niece has a huge podcast, like enormous, and it's very famous, but they didn't like their manager. And when you're millennial and when you're like 25, 26, 27, you don't know that a manager's supposed to call you back. Like you don't know how you're supposed to be treated yet. Yeah. So it's like having a first boyfriend. So I would listen to her and her partner on the podcast, like they off stage would be like, oh my God, it's terrible. He never calls us. It's a month later. And in my head, I'm thinking, oh, Jesus Christ, what the fuck? And I can't advice give her. So I remember it was a whole weekend I was on the road with them because they do theater shows. And I go, oh, that's terrible. Oh, that must be hard for you. Oh God, that must be very difficult, which people like hearing that you empathize. But then she goes, Aunt Lisa, I mean, like, what would you do if your manager didn't call you back? And I go, are you asking what I would do? And she goes, yes. I go, he's fucking fired tonight. I go, get Leo on the phone, the business manager. You don't even have to call him and fire him. Have Leo fire him and meet with my manager tomorrow. Dude, it happened exactly that way.
Yay.
My manager got them double the money in the contract and they're happy. And it's just interesting how I lay in wait. I'm like a snake waiting, a friendly snake.
Yeah.
Ask me what I think, it is but again, that's my greatest teacher, is someone who doesn't ask so that I can sit with the discomfort of shutting the fuck up. Because clearly, I'm sure you guys have noticed, my favorite hobby is talking about myself.
Shutting the fuck up doesn't come naturally.
It does not. And I'm like, damn it. What? I have to listen. I know it's hard.
Okay, so before I let you go, we're getting close to the hour mark. I want to ask you, when is the first time you remember hearing about my grandpa? And what's your own personal Willie Nelson story?
Okay, I cannot listen to Always on My Mind ever, because it was, when it came out, I forget what year, but I remember it was very popular. I don't even know, like even now I'm tearing up right now. I don't even know why, right here. Like it just got me, right? So I'm like, okay, what's wrong with me? But so now you're gonna laugh. In acting, I don't do much acting because I just don't think that's my gift. If I have to do an emotional thing in a play or in a little skit or anything, I literally think of that song and his version, obviously, because, that's the one. Sorry, anybody else who did it.
Yeah.
You get there.
Mhm.
So and again, it's a song that's on my, iTunes or whatever in reserve for that, because I need a thing for it to get me there emotionally.
Mhm.
And sometimes I'll put that song, and there's a couple others on the playlist that when you're going through something and the emotions won't come, like grief, and you really have to cry over something, that you go, I gotta use this as a tool, like a little gentle push.
Yeah.
And it just gets me there. So I can't even believe I get to tell you this. And it really is special to me.
It's like sticking your finger down your throat to make yourself throw up.
Yeah, well, it was a much better result, I think.
I can't wait to tell my grandpa that he makes you cry.
I mean, doesn't his voice just get to you? I mean, isn't it just the most soulful thing you've ever heard? I mean, is it weird that, your grandfather has such a gift, or did you just be like, oh yeah, that's just my grandpa?
Yeah, it's just my grandpa. I mean, I know that he's famous. We talked about this last time too. People say he's a legend, and I understand that, but because you tell me. But to me, I just know he's always been famous, and everybody loves him.
Yeah. I mean, he's one of those inarguably great guys. As far as he's one of the greats. What's weird about being one of the greats, I'm sure, is you never know you are, and you're not sure if you are, and you don't know if you'll be remembered. Like, I remember it really hit me when I saw Hamilton, because the whole thing is really about legacy, and it's really about, who will remember you. And, you really have, you have no input on who lives, who dies, who tells your story. Right. So Hamilton basically was largely forgotten until the show. So I always wonder if people who legitimately make contributions like your grandfather know in their heart that they are that special. So I hope he knows it. That's all I'm saying. I just hope that he knows he has had an impact on a shitload of people.
Yeah,
it's the authenticity. It's with all those people. You can just, you speak of his voice, they threw him out of fucking Nashville because they said he couldn't sing. You had to go to Texas to make it. It's just ridiculous. That's the business town.
Yeah.
But
don't you love that? Don't you love that people who think they know something don't know anything? And by the way, I mean, I'm no stranger to thinking I know everything.
Oh, me too.
And now, do you realize the older you get, the less you know? It's like, we're so fucked right now.
Yes. I knew way more when I was 25 than I do now. You know what I mean?
Yes, exactly. But do tell him if you remember to mention that. It's just
yeah, I'm gonna send it to him. We'll clip it and I'll send that. I'll send it to him.
Yay. Now, does he live full time in Hawaii?
Back and forth between Austin, Texas, and Hawaii.
He lives most full time on the bus.
Yeah, even at home, he's kind of hanging out on his bus, actually.
Really?
And, yeah, he likes his bus.
Well, it's interesting because I was pretty good friends with, and kind of am still a good acquaintance with Larry the Cable Guy, also known as, Dan Whitney, his name is. I did 2 of his movies with him, and of course they were the worst movies ever, but we had so much fun, and we always got nominated for the shittiest movie of the year, Razzie, and all that. But his tour bus, I'm like, yeah, we can live on this thing. I mean, isn't it amazing to you how elaborate and just fantastic those buses are?
Yeah, my grandpa, that was the first thing I thought was the coolest thing about him, was that he lived on a tour bus, and I loved getting in and playing in the bunk beds. I just wanted to go back and forth and pretend I was sleeping and then make them up. And then, I just thought that was the coolest thing. And I think I wanted to be a singer just because I thought every singer gets to live in a tour bus.
We introduced her to the 15-passenger van.
Yeah,
so that's
I have a 15-passenger van.
Wow. Oh my God. I remember once when I was doing comedy close, like you do maybe like Madison, Wisconsin, and then a city that was 5 hours away or whatever. And we rented one of those like luxury vans and stuff. I felt like we were in a band so much, but we were like the band of the biggest nerds you've ever seen. Is traveling, do you do a lot of traveling still for music?
Yes.
Well, before COVID, we did.
Yeah. So do you what would you say about the lifestyle? Are you home enough to, before COVID, obviously, home enough to really keep roots there and enjoy it? Or is it just crazy on the bus all the time?
No, I have kids. My boys are 14. I have twins that are 14 and a daughter that's 12.
You do not.
and I homeschool them. So we would get out on the weekends and they would stay with their dad. I'm not with their dad anymore, and I love his new wife. Same thing. We're friends and we co-parent pretty well together.
Mhm.
But yeah, we were here Monday through Thursday and then
Wednesday.
and
Play
then
Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and back.
drive home Sunday.
And the way the music business is nowadays, you spend so much money trying to get from Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday, Wednesday. Like your weekends are paying for those if you go out. So a lot of bands, and where Nashville is, we're 8 to 10 hours away from so many places all around the East Coast, short of the West Coast. We're 8 or 10 hours away. So a lot of bands have figured out a way to not go out for a year and go out and do the weekend warrior thing and live a semi-normal life.
I like that because we used to work, once you do theaters, like there's comics who sadly will never get out of clubs, but then once you kind of graduate and make it big, you play these big theaters. So when I started doing that, it was just, thank God I only had to work Fridays and Saturdays.
Yeah.
So that's like the best lifestyle, except then when you start to notice, which I started towards the end, that every Thursday that I had to prepare to leave, I was so bummed. I was like, wait a minute, like that's not how I'm supposed to feel.
Right.
So it's funny though, every time I get ready to go into the studio to do this podcast, like it's literally not far from my house, but I'm still counting the seconds. I'm so excited to go. So I'm like, wow, the excitement has to kind of be percolating in there,
Yeah.
And by the way, one last thing, I literally thought you were 25 and you said,
oh, Jesus, here we go.
No, I'm not kidding. I'm laughing. So when she said 20, how old your oldest you said?
My boys are 14.
Well, she had her first kid when she was 9. So.
I was 9, yeah, when I had
I was doing the math real quick because I don't really lie. Like I don't tell women they look young if they don't, or thin if they don't. Like I don't, like why bother? That's not, my opinion doesn't really matter, and why lie anyway. But dude, you said they were that age, and I go, what?
I'm 30. I'm actually 37, but I say I identify as a 27-year-old.
Duh. Oh my God. Well, I am 60, but I'm also the world's oldest millennial because I'm woke AF. So I think what happened was when I lost all the weight, which was 11 years ago. Wow. I feel like I turned back the clock so much with health that I literally felt 19. And I think that's why I have the hair. That's why I dress like a freaking Forever 21 asshole. I'm like, who cares? So yes, we have to.
I know you're not going to believe me after what you just said, but you don't look 60.
I know. Oh no, I'll believe that. I'll take that.
I would like you like 45, 46.
Yes, bitch. Well, funny. When I had that surgery, the weight loss surgery, it's not like I made a decision, but I always thought right after that, I go, wow, I really saved my life with that thing. It's a great surgery. But I said, I am never doing anything to myself above the neck because I'm like, dude, you did enough below the neck, okay? But I'm finding like you really settle into your face if you just let yourself age.
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay, well, I'll put on makeup and it has to be good enough. So I'm glad you said that because I have to tell all my friends I'm nailing it.
You're nailing it. Lisa, thank you for doing this. You're so fucking cool.
Oh my God, dude, seriously, you guys are amazing. I was so flattered that you reached out. It was so just open-hearted and big of you. And thank you for listening to the podcast. It really means a lot to me. So
I'll keep spreading the word.
Yeah, we will definitely spread the word. It's great. Yeah. I'm glad you found it too. This sounds like you found the perfect thing to do in retirement.
Yeah. And real quick, one last little thing, which will make you laugh, but I'll do a shameless plug. And it's the stupidest plug ever.
Do it.
Literally, I'm 60 and just got on TikTok. It is the stupidest, funnest thing. And it's one of those things where later in life, you don't want to learn anything, or at least I didn't. And I was like, I don't want to learn this. It's fucking stupid. These kids, dude, here's one lesson. Ask for help. Nobody wants to ask for help. We feel weak. I asked these 2 millennial guys I knew for help. They taught me how to do it. It is so dumb. And so I created this Losers with a Dream page. We have like tiny amount of followers. Like 3. Oh, that's ridiculous. Like 30 something followers, but I just started it last week. And I go, if you let go of the results, it doesn't matter if anything happens. But I think it's a good lesson for people my age that sometimes you gotta not have that old story about yourself that you don't do new things or learn, because that's what I did for years and just thought I'd stay stuck. So yeah, follow us on Losers with a Dream on
I'm doing it right now. Also, you have to follow the old gay guys on TikTok. If you just got on there, go find old gay guys.
I'm writing it down.
You're gonna
Are they
love
literally
it.
called old gay guys?
Yeah.
No, that's just Raelyn. That's the way she talks.
No, I'm absolutely going to do that.
I'm double checking, but I think so. Isn't it old gay guys? I made them all listen to it on our
It's
last
hilarious.
trip.
Oh,
Yeah,
that's
old gay guys, and it has a man, balding old man. And he's going. That's the profile. Everybody should go follow them. It's great.
That's so much fun. Isn't it funny how we get these closed minds about certain like technologies or this or that or hobbies or anything and go, that's just stupid. And then it's just fun and dumb. And again, when you talk about being creative, you can be creative and do silly shit. So yes, listen to the podcast, follow us on Losers with a Dream, and like, thank you for having me.
Thanks, Lisa. It's nice to meet you.
Thank you. God bless. Bye.
Lisa Lampanelli is my favorite retired comedian.
Yes, the queen of mean. Now she's the queen of nice. I don't know, life coach. Anyway, enjoy your groceries.
Don't be an asshole.
I know your mama's name.
We freed Britney, y'all.